we'll enjoy lunch better then if you are more hungry. So let me quickly give a brief of this session. Standardization efforts on quantum technologies. Quantum technologies are rapidly advancing and have the potential to revolutionize computing, communication, and other fields. However, the lack of standardization poses a challenge for the widespread adoption of these technologies. This session will explore the standardization efforts underway in the quantum technology industry, including the development of standards for quantum communication, quantum computing, and quantum sensors. And let me invite on stage the chair of this session, Shri Shankar Pandey ji. Can we invite the panelists on stage first?
We'll wait for 5 minutes.
Joining us in this session will be Shri Ritu Ranjan Mitterji, Senior DDG and Head of TEC, Professor Anil Prabhakar from IIT Madras, Professor C.M. Chandrashekar from IISc Bengaluru, and online also we'll be having two of our presenters, Shri Matthew Campagna, AWS Cryptography from United States, and we will have a pre-recorded talk by Dr. Dustin Moody from NIST, United States. We are waiting for the chair to be amongst us. Can we have the other members kindly on stage, please? Shri Shankar Pandey ji will be joining us later. Shri Ritu Ranjan Mittal, Professor Anil Prabhakar, Professor C.M. Chandrashekar. So let's welcome on stage Shri Shankar Pandey ji, Member Digital Communication Commission, Department of Telecommunications. He is going to be the Honorable Chair for this session. He joined ITS in July 1986 and has worked in different disciplines and areas. headed a number of telecom districts as Telecom District Manager, Aligarh and Raebareli. In the capacity of General Manager and Principal General Manager, worked at Aligarh, Faridabad, Noida, Ghaziabad and Gurgaon for 14 years. Promoted to CGM grade and posted as Chief General Manager, Himachal Pradesh for about a year, and then CGM Haryana Telecom Circle for 3 years. On promotion to Senior DDG level, he got posted as Head Madhya Pradesh LSA for approximately 1.5 years, and from February 2023 working as Member Services DOT. I request Honorable Chair to kindly begin the proceedings.
Very good afternoon to each and everybody present over here and on the dais also. So friends, last 1.5 days, all crypto and crypto. I think now things may be going overhead, all of you. So I'll not talk much about crypto. So I'll tell you one small story about me, then I'll read whatever has been given me to read over here. So I did my MTech from IIT Kharagpur way back 84-85, so almost 4 decades. After completing my 2 semesters, I was asked to do some project. Some academician maybe here, they must be knowing Dr. M.N. Farooqi. He was a great scientist over there, later he became director IIT Bombay also. One digital lab was there, that was known with the name of Dr. Farooqi's lab. He told Mr. Pandey, work with me on the linear prediction of speech in 84-85. I mean, how to communicate, mind-machine communication. That was the very beginning, some work has been done. We thought, sir, what is this? Then he told, no, come with me. Then I think I worked with him around 8 to 9 months' time. Then this ITS was to be joined in July 86. Then I left IT after completing my projects. So what we did say 4 decades back in the linear prediction of speech, how the speech is predicted. Today it is reality. I've got so many things, Alexa, etc., etc., etc. So that was one small story for me. Today you people are doing brainstorming on the crypto. A lot of things has been done, and some more things are yet to be done. The session is going very nicely. Now friends, this conclave organized by TC, CROT and TSDSI is being held at a time when the world is witnessing a rapid transformation in the field of telecommunications. As we move towards a more connected and digital world, it is imperative that we pay close attention to the security of our communication networks and ensure that they are safe from the threat of cyber attacks and other forms of malicious activities. As has been discussed in the previous sessions, the advent of quantum computers has the potential to render current communication infrastructure vulnerable. Quantum computers are capable of breaking many of cryptographic systems currently used to secure information transmission. As a result, sensitive information such as financial transaction, medical records, etc., etc., we have seen quantum key distribution, QKD, and PQC are 2 potential remedies for vulnerability of communication infrastructure caused by the advent of quantum computers. QKD uses the principle of quantum mechanics, which everybody has read in the early schooling days, to establish secure keys for the encryption, making it impervious to attackers from the quantum computers. Similarly, PQC uses the principle of quantum mechanics to secure keys for encryption, making it impervious to attack from the quantum computers. PQC, on the other hand, relies on the mathematical problems that cannot be easily solved by quantum computers, so making it a potential solution for the long-term security of the encrypted data. Many industries and startups are working on the developing of QKD and PQC technologies with the aim of creating a new generation of secure communication system. This includes research into quantum-resistant cryptographic algorithms, as well as development of new hardware and infrastructure capable of implementing QKD and PQC technologies. Governments and international organizations have also recognized the need for these solutions, with many investing in research and development programs to address the security risk posed by quantum computers. As quantum computing technology continues to advance, it becomes increasingly important for organizations to incorporate QKD and PQC technologies into their communication system. Making standards are crucial for development of products. Now, today's session is for the standardization of the equipments that incorporate QKD and PQC technologies. Standardization ensures that products from different manufacturers are interoperable, which is essential for the adoption of these technologies on a large scale basis. A lack of standardization can lead to fragmentation of the market, making it difficult for businesses and organizations to choose and implement these technologies effectively. Standardization also helps to ensure that products meet the necessary security requirements and provide a consistent level of protection against attacks from quantum computers. To address these issues, various standardization bodies are working to develop standards for QKD and PQC technologies, providing a framework for the development and deployment of these products on a global scale. With the increasing use of quantum technologies in various fields, telecom, finance, healthcare, and defense, it is essential that we have a robust and reliable standards to validate our products in order to ensure their performance. TEC released a set of standards and test procedures for QKD systems. These standards provide a framework for the development and deployment of QKD systems in India, ensuring that they meet the necessary security and interoperability requirements. The standards cover various aspects QKD system, including key management, security protocols, and performance evaluation. The release of these standards and test procedures is a significant step towards the adoption of QKD technology in India, providing a clear path for the development of these systems by business and government bodies. This session will play a crucial role in bringing together experts from the different fields to share their knowledge and expertise and work towards establishing standards that can ensure the security of our communication system. I am confident that the discussion and deliberation that will take place over the course of this conference will help us in identifying the gaps so that installation activities could be started in these identified areas. So basically, session is for the making standards which can suit to the industries and it cannot be fragmented. Being a member of DCC, just I would like to intimate the whole gathering that Government of India, Telecom Ministry is doing a lot of funding for the startups who are coming with some development of some technologies. So if some people are interested in developing the new system depending upon QKD, they can come up to us, give the presentation, and if it appeals, then definitely we will fund it. With these words and a small story about me, now we are the teething problems with all the technologies. QKD is the future for the encryption and security of our networks. So I would like you share that all the knowledge available over here to the betterment of the country. Jai Hind. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insights. And now I'd like to introduce Sri Ritu Ranjan Mittarji, Senior DDG and Head TEC. He is an Indian Telecommunications Service Officer with over 35 years of experience in the telecommunications industry. Shri Mittar has worked on various projects related to the development and deployment of telecommunications networks, standards and policies in India. He has also been involved in the development of various technical standards and specifications for the telecommunications industry, including quantum, 5G, IoT, and M2M technologies. Under his leadership, TEC has released standards on quantum key distribution system and quantum safe cryptography system. Sri Ritu Ranjan Mittarji, request him to kindly deliver his keynote address.
Yeah. Thank you, madam. So, experts on the dais, experts of the dais, ladies and gentlemen. TEC, as you know, is a technical arm of Department of Telecom. Coming to international standardization, we are a technical arm. Being a technical arm, we have national study groups corresponding to the ITUT study groups in ITUT. Somebody mentioned about ITUT study group 13 standards. So there are a number of study groups, and we also have a national study group. So I take this opportunity to invite you to connect to these study groups. Rather, we will welcome the participation from academia, eminent professors here, industry, so that whatever we discuss and deliberate in national study groups, that can go as a national contribution, and it has a better chance of getting accepted at the international community because it goes as an Indian contribution. Because being government, it's a member state, so member state has more power than the sector members. So I invite you to contribute to the national study groups. For this purpose, we have opened a standardization coordination portal. So you can join that portal, contribute through that portal, and become part of the collaborative effort that we want you. Another important thing I would like to inform you is that India in Delhi would be hosting WTSA, World Telecommunications Standardization Assembly in 2024. It will be October 2nd week in Delhi. So time is now to start, because though the technical work is done in the study groups, but the directions to the study groups is given through the WTSA meetings. There are resolutions. So I request that you please go through those resolutions and see what are the gaps. So whatever we want 5 years hence, we can direct through the WTSA resolution. Even a small phrase would be a direction to study groups that this work need to be done, and the priority it needs. So that is about the ITUT. Coming to TEC standards, you are aware about the QKD and the PQC standard, and the test guide was released yesterday by Honorable Minister. So we have standards of a couple of types. One is the generic requirements, where we try to go into details, even the details about if a product is there, what would be the safety standard, what would be the EMI EMC standard, environmental conditions and the technical features of course. And corresponding to these standards, we have certifications. So corresponding to generic requirements or those standards, we have certification which we call type approval certificate. So if you think that you comply to that, your product complies to any particular standard, you can approach us, and we would, through a team effort, we will test and give a type approval certificate. Even if you don't comply to a complete standard, then we have something called certificate of approval. That means that if you have your own standards, you can approach us, and as a third party, we will test and give you a certificate of approval. So certificate of approval is normally given to a product for which standards are not existing. But even if now we've become a little more lenient, even if a GR is there and you're not meeting and you still want a COA, normally a certificate of approval is given if there's no GR. For example, free space optical system from Google Tara, that was given. We have application from Navtech Ahmedabad. GR is still not there. SD-WANs, software-defined wide area network. We have GR, but we are trying with we are helping one organization to get a COA, though GR is there. So these are 2 certifications. Then something called technology approval, which we mostly do for CDOT, because any technology which is gone through R&D and is tried in predominantly BSNL network is given technology approval. So that is another approval. We also do something which is called mandatory testing, which is in response to DPIIT, and we are a single inquiry point for World Trade Organization technical barrier to trade for the telecom sector. For the other sectors, it is BIS. So we make something called essential requirements. That means a bare minimal set of requirements which a product should meet to be inducted in Indian telecom network, but it should be notified. So that also is going on in phases. So apart from this, in short, we make specifications and we do testing and certification. Yesterday, Honorable Minister announced 10 million called simultaneous test for CDOT 4G EPC. I'm proud to tell that TEC was involved in that testing, and incidentally we had the test gear, and the whole load was generated and sent from the TEC office in New Delhi right to Chandigarh over fibers. So that is something which is we are also, mostly all testing and certifications TEC is involved. And just to end on a lighter note, we are talking of standardization. I was pleasantly surprised to note that sender and receiver has been standardized as Alice and Bob. So many presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for apprising us of the role of TEC in standardization of quantum technologies. We next have Sri Matthew Campagna. He's with us virtually. He's a senior principal engineer and cryptographer for Amazon Web Services. He oversees the design and analysis of cryptographic solutions across AWS. He is a member of the ETSI Security Algorithms Group Expert and chairman of ETSI TC Cyber's Quantum Safe Cryptography Group. Previously, Matthew managed Certicom, BlackBerry's cryptography research group focused on the development of intellectual property and standardization for elliptic curve cryptography. Do we have him online?
So, yes, can you hear me?
Yes. You may switch on your camera, and your audio is, we can hear your audio. Just switch on your camera if you want to.
It shows my camera is on, and I see it in the portal.
Yes, we see your presentation. Yes, yes, thank you.
And I'm not sure, the video seems to be running on my end. Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Matt Campagna from Amazon. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm going to be talking about the work we're doing in ETSI TC side for the working group on quantum safe cryptography. So I have a short agenda, starting with a brief history of the working group, some basic information on the working group today, participation and roles within the organization. I'll go through the completed set of technical recommendations and specifications we've done so far, as well as current work items that we're working on today. And then finally, how to participate in ETSI TC Cyber. So ETSI is the European Telecommunications Standards Institute, and it's a regionalized standards body focused on information technology systems. Within there are 29 technical committees, and these are organizations that can create technical specifications and European standards that are normative standards, as well as technical recommendations. And then we have 17 industry specification groups that typically produce technical recommendations as opposed to standards. And 2 open source groups developing compliance software to specifications. ETSI plays a special role within Europe to produce harmonized European standards along with CEN and CENELEC. And these are standards that can be included in, for compliance with European regulations. They also participate in a few partnerships. There's a 3rd generation partnership project, which is the cellular standards, as well as 1M2M, which is focused on the Internet of Things, machine-to-machine communication. ETSI is funded primarily through its membership fees, but it also receives some financing through the European Commission and the Europe Free Trade Association as part of its special role to produce these harmonized standards. It's located in Sophia Antipolis in the south of France, and the Director General is Luis Jorge Romero. So the working group really started back in 2013, and maybe even a little before that, when ETSI and the Institute for Quantum Computing at the University of Waterloo was looking to bring together the communities beyond what was really going on in academia, the post-quantum crypto, bring together members of industry as well as governments to sort of focus on the problem of really changing the dialogue from post-quantum crypto to developing these new cryptographic standards now, with an awareness that after participating in the transition from RSA to elliptic curve and watching the standardization of AES and SHA as was earlier indicated, that these things take 20 years, 15, 20 years for adoption. And if we didn't start that process for quantum-safe cryptography, we'd be exposed to the development of some future quantum computing, at least when it comes to the confidentiality of our information. In 2015, we published the Quantum-Safe Cryptography and Security White Paper as a result of that initial workshop. And we also started an industry specification group on quantum-safe crypto. We've had a lot of great participation in the workshop. Members from NIST, Microsoft, BlackBerry, NCSC, and other government institutions really participated. And I think as a group of focused people on quantum-safe crypto, we were delighted when NIST opened their call, because NIST is one of the few organizations that can really corral the global audience of cryptographers to arrive at a new high assurance cryptographic algorithm. They have a great track record with AES and SHA. In 2017, the working group became the industry specification group became a working group of TC Cyber, enabling it to begin writing beyond just recommendations, but also some specifications and normative standards. So today we meet 4 times a year in coordination with Cyber, TC Cyber, and it's held in hybrid mode, so it's friendly for teleconferencing, which makes it easy for people to participate modulo the time shift. So today I'm the chair of the working group. We have 2 vice chairs that consist of Philip LaFrance from ICERA, Dan Grundy from NCSC. Our secretary is Tony Barnett from Talis, and our technical officer is Laura Pushin from ETSI. And all the working groups at ETSI have a technical officer to help us align our work with the requirements for development of standards within ETSI. We have a healthy participation, typically 30 to 40 registered participants for each of our meetings, with a variety of corporate, government, and academia participating in the events. So what have we been working on? Well, when we started, sort of our first kind of technical recommendation was a broad survey of post-quantum techniques. This was prior to the NIST process. So we were just looking at sort of a field study of what's available in the industry or in the publication to sort of develop new post-quantum schemes. We revised those in subsequent TRs that were based a little more focused or completely focused on the round 3 candidates for the NIST process, breaking them up into the public key encryption, key encapsulation, schemes, as well as the quantum safe signature schemes. And these were both taking a look at the broad survey of what's available, as well as measuring and speculating on how well they would fit in our existing protocols and use cases to inform the NIST process on making the selection. We produced 2 technical recommendations on how to apply these post-quantum schemes, or how to make things like our virtual private networks, so VPN technologies like TLS, IPsec, SSH, MACsec, and moving that to post-quantum. So it has a lot of migration proposals for moving those networks, as well as the use of lattice-based crypto to generate identity-based encryptions, which were also used within other organizations within ETSI. We developed a general migration strategy document for quantum safe schemes, kind of starting with inventorying, has very practical recommendations on how to start that process. Produce a technical recommendations it's based on NIST published a specification, NIST SP 800-208, which is about stateful hash-based signature schemes. And these have a new requirement in terms of managing private keys, and that you need to manage the state of your private key, because they're essentially modifications of one-time signature schemes. This provides additional recommendations on how to carefully manage that state so you don't reuse the same state. And we have one technical specification around quantum safe hybrid key exchanges, and this outlines 2 methods in which you can do both a classical key exchange or a post-quantum key exchange, or CAM, to derive at a key establishment that would require your adversary to break both of those schemes. It comes in 2 flavors, sort of what we call a concatenate, where you're doing the 2 key establishments without adding additional round trips, and then arriving at a key to secure that session, and then a cascade method, which is more akin to building something like a tunnel within a tunnel, which lends itself really nice to IPsec. Our current work items, we're just finishing up a technical recommendation on migration for quantum safe crypto for the intelligent transport systems. This has a unique set of constraints. It has 1, a fairly complex PKI infrastructure, and 2, very severe bandwidth constrained application, vehicle-to-vehicle communication, that poses, really outlines some of the struggles that ITC is going to have to migrate to post-quantum crypto. And a lot of these migration plans early on, the earlier you can begin this work and take inventory and analyze how the proposed schemes are going to work in your environment and your specific use case, the earlier you can realize if you need to re-architect, which is significantly more work than sort of figuring out how to do without re-architecting, how to drop in or do a hybrid mode. We have a work item on deployment considerations for hybrid schemes. We heard earlier about the potential of using certificates that are either, I'll say, a composite certificate that has both a classical and a post-quantum scheme, or 2 separate certificates, a classical and a post-quantum scheme, as well as how they might be related, like enforcing that the post-quantum scheme certificate is pinned to the classical certificate, and working through some of those edge cases of what happens when you revoke one or the other, or one key within a certificate but not the other. So it's making general recommendations about that. This is pretty early on, that TR. We're updating the quantum safe hybrid key exchange specification. The first version was intended for sort of a ephemeral key exchange. It provided what's known as security against chosen plaintext attacks, where we're augmenting that and adding in security against chosen ciphertext attacks. And this would be applicable to something like mailing systems or key establishment techniques where it's not interactive. And then we have 2 technical recommendations. One that's looking at quantum computing effects on the cryptographic security assumptions that we make in developing the proofs. So when we develop a standard, we typically accompany that with an academic publication that provides evidence of why this standard is secure. And that contains security proofs And those security groups make some assumptions on the hardness of problems. And not all of them are just public key assumptions that we make. There's a number of other assumptions, and we're looking at sort of a more of a clinical analysis of how do those assumptions hold up against quantum computing. So kind of informing the cryptographer and the researcher on how do we update the set of evidence that we have for our existing standards. And finally, looking at the impact of quantum computing on symmetric cryptography, taking a deeper look at the application of Grover to things like block ciphers and hashing algorithms. So finally, how to participate. I know there are members heard from Talis, and Sarah's name came up. And of course, the Center for Development of Telematics are all members of ETSI. You can find us in the ETSI portal. One of the nice things about ETSI is the work is driven by its members. They participate in the working groups and they drive the agenda and the work items. And we're focused on trying to solve our constituents, our members' problems. So any member can come and propose work items for the working group to take on. Another nice aspect of the ETSI standards in general and recommendations is that once completed, they're publicly available. They're free to download. There's no paywall or no signing in. They're just public standards for use. You can find us under the Cyber Technical Committee or a working group, and you can click through and find our work program, our meetings, drafts of the current work items. We meet 4 times a year, as I said. Our next meeting is in May. It's a great time to come to Tafi and Picpus because it is in the south of France. It's a little bit before the busy season, but the weather is terrific. We'll meet again in September, which is a little after the busy season, but still nice weather. And then we'll meet again in December. So I want to thank you for your attention. I really appreciate it. I hope some of you get an opportunity to attend. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Matthew. We know it's late night in US, and thank you for taking our time for us, for our conclave. Thank you so much. Our distinguished panel also has Professor Anil Prabhakar. He's been with the faculty at the Department of Electrical Engineering, IIT Madras, since 2002, and is engaged across multiple laboratories that work on quantum technologies. He has more than 50 publications and co-authored 2 books and is on the editorial board of 3 international journals. He is the founder of QNU Labs and Confluence, companies incubated by IIT Madras, pursuing quantum communications and quantum computing, respectively. Professor Anil Prabhakar, please.
Thank you very much for that introduction. I guess I'm struggling with the green buttons. Is that what it is?
Yeah, green, there are many greens. So you can try and you can tell us.
All right. I'm going to be between you and lunch, and there are more speakers, so let's see how well we can do this. Right? Thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to come and talk about some of the work that we do. This forum is also, I'm happy to see there are lots of people who are doing all this work, so I can stop working so hard. It's my takeaway message. No, I'm sure it's wrong. Okay, yeah. So very brief outline. We'll tell you a little bit about our center called CQuick, and then we'll jump into talking about the Metro Area Quantum Access Network. It's got the acronym MACAN, and the MACAN collaboration consists of IIT Madras, CDAC, SETS, and ERNET, and we have shared responsibilities. Describe some of the practical problems with doing something like this. We have seen a lot of people, with demonstrations, and I'll show you the problems we faced and then the future prospects. There's a timeline out there. There were many firsts in this conference. I told someone I'm going to say we were second, so no one can take away the second position. I think the DST funded us in 2009, and then starting with 2016 was our version of Quantum 2.0. And each successive generation has actually been moving us along the technology readiness level. Hopefully, we are now in the stage where we can deploy some of these solutions. Few students, faculty, staff members who have helped us on this journey. We have three main verticals that we talk about. One is quantum networks, the second one is quantum computing, and then the third one is more about building hardware. We do all of them. It's very interdisciplinary. Today we have faculty from all kinds of departments. The few photographs you see are there are the ones who have contributed to some of our journey in the quantum networks. So this is the Macan topology that we have. It's a testbed for different protocols. It's optical fiber that connects IIT Madras Research Park, the Society for Electronic Transaction Security, that is SETS, which reports to the PSA's office, and will eventually get to NIC, which connects to the National Knowledge Network. We have also brought in ERNET and BEL, so we are expanding our network as we get more partners joining us. And the idea is that this can act as a test bed for anybody, and whoever develops solutions for QKD, quantum secret sharing, quantum queues, and quantum network standards. The Macan collaboration itself, the way it works is, I'm quite proud to say that we've actually managed to get people to work together, which is itself a first or a second. So IIT Madras brings in the expertise on DPS QKD, cow QKD, over long distances. We also do the quantum queues and the quantum information. SETS does the FPGA firmware, does the post-quantum cryptography. CDAC Bangalore takes the brunt of the work. CDAC Trivandrum does a lot of the standards, is building out the software layers. And ERNET, who's our latest partner, is going to take on the link monitoring and the network management. So it's not just a temporary demonstration, but it's actually supposed to run 24/7 long term, right? This is something that I often put up. It's a slide that tells you that most of quantum key distribution is actually very classical. It's about 90% of it is classical. There's 10% of quantum. So if you don't know quantum mechanics, it's perfectly fine. You can still work in this space and contribute heavily. There is a big difference between the quantum channel, which is running at about 100 kilobits per second, and the classical channel that is running at about 100 gigabits per second. It's this information theory layers that provide us the ability to actually encrypt, although we do not have 100 gigabits per second of key generation rates. So in summary, I would say that people who promise you unconditional security are actually giving you false promises, because there is this big discrepancy between the key rate and the actual data rate that is on a fiber optic channel today. Right? In simple terms, it means that I am using your password 1,000,000 times, which itself gives you an sort of insecurity. So this is the Macan field trials. We worked very hard to do this by Independence Day. There was IIT Madras connected to IITM Research Park over a single fiber. So that was done on using wavelength division multiplexing, and then we had two fibers from SETS to IIT Madras Research Park. So we did both on a single fiber as well as two fibers. We did picosecond distributed clock synchronization, and we had point to multi-point demonstrations. Maybe this image is not very clear, but this is actually an image of the Darpan Q software that is developed by CDAC Trivandrum. It allows us to monitor the network and connect different nodes as they come live. So it is fully software defined. It's interoperable. It meets the ETSI, ITU-T and the ISO specs. And as we learn more about these specifications, the burden comes to make sure that we are meeting all of them. And the idea is that Darpan Q will then allow new nodes to come on, having different hardware. Maybe CDOT's hardware will come on, maybe QNew's hardware will come on, whoever gets new hardware can plug it into the network and then we can test it out. Our own hardware is actually embarrassingly looks like a student project, but it's what we call an open hardware, open quantum system. And the reason we stress on open quantum system is because quantum key distribution systems are supposed to be secure because of the information theoretic aspects of it. It's not what we would otherwise call security by obscurity. So, I mean, anyone who tells you that, they cannot open their box, you have to ask why, because it's supposed to be secure even if an eavesdropper is there, right? So, I think we have to start relying on these open quantum systems where we know what is inside it, and even then these systems are secure. This is typical WDM, and I put this up, many of you will already know what it is, but the last line which says that the WDM channels have an isolation of 50 dB between them for classical. Actually, we need more than 80 dB if you want to use the same fiber for quantum along with classical. That means we need new standards on what we are going to be able to do on the fiber if you are going to try to do QKD on a WDM network, right? So that is something that we have been looking at. The optical assembly, as I said, is all open, and it looks typically more dirty than this, but we try to keep it cleaner. Right? Okay, so here's another standard that should be there, right? So this is a very short distance from IIT Madras Research Park to SETS. It was basically across the road. And our losses out there were about 4 dB on a splice. So when people say 50 kilometers fiber, what they are basically telling you is there's 10 dB of loss, because it's 0.2 decibels per kilometer and you have 50 kilometers, so you have 10 dB of loss. On a very short link, if you don't have any standards, I can see already 4 splices and a 4 dB loss at one splice. Right? Between IIT Madras and IIT Research Park was another such link, and I had 4 dB losses out there, and I had another 3 dB connector loss. So this is the problem with standards which are not implemented correctly, right? And to set up this link, we had to go in and actually clean up, well, I didn't do it, but a lot of the students and staff had to go in and clean up a lot of these links, right? And it was not so simple classical problems. So you look at it, one of the splice boxes, you can see light leaking out. If you want to know why you want quantum, because this is the state of what we are actually having in the field. The splice box in the bottom right was covered in mud completely, and then after cleaning it's supposed to look like what was on the top, right? And these are the practical considerations that overwhelm quantum communications. We are talking standards, and this is what we are actually having to deal with. Crosstalk between 2 fibers. Remember, it's not crosstalk on one fiber. I'm not talking of crosstalk between channels. I'm talking of crosstalk between 2 fibers. I'm sending the clock on one fiber and my quantum channel picks it up on the other one. Right? I don't know. I mean, what are we talking about, right? Our quantum channels are very sensitive. So this is the crosstalk. Okay, look at 2 fibers next to each other, spliced, but they're covered with transparent sleeves, right? And the light that goes on the clock, the signal that is going on one fiber, I'm picking it up on the second fiber. So we go in there and cover it with tape and try to minimize that, right? We don't have specs on a lot of these things. So if you are talking of specifications from a practical standpoint, I think one has to think of it from end to end. If I'm going to say I'm going to do quantum key distribution across long distances, we need specs on all of these things, right? Chennai to Bangalore, right? 550 kilometers of fiber. The plan is to do this. There's a station every 30 to 50 kilometers. So instead of having 2 secure nodes, I need 14 secure nodes, right? I have to reduce the swap and the cost, and that can come only if you use photonic integrated circuits. So that has got to be our next goal for anyone who's planning to do these kind of things. The route is not straight. It has to go through all the various stations. This is actually the BSNL network that we have begun looking at. So what is the purpose of doing something like this? To leapfrog, right? We do not want to keep doing what other people have always been doing, right? So we did Makan, right? Metro Area Quantum Access Networks. So you build a house. The next thing, I'm going to switch to Hindi. Makan to bana diya, abhi to kila banayenge hum, right? The quantum internet with local access, right? So we have to think big, we have to leapfrog, and so this is what we do, right? We're going to do Chennai, Bangalore, and then we go Bangalore, Delhi. That's 2,200 kilometers. You're probably going to need a lot more nodes, secure nodes. It's probably not going to be 2,200 kilometers on fiber. The Chennai, Bangalore was 350, but we ended up with 550 with 14 secure nodes, right? So when you start looking at these practical things, and you can imagine how many splice boxes I'm going to have and how much leakage I'm going to have on them. So some of these ideas that we are now projecting are quite futuristic, but we don't have the time to do it in 20 years. We're going to do it in the next 3 to 5 years. At least that's what I hope. Right? So I'm going to stop here with my acknowledgements. As I said, we started in 2008 or 2009, we got support from DST, and then the PSA's office kick-started our journey again, and now we've finished Makan, and the hope is to do Kila, which is the quantum internet with local access, right? So the next time you think of QKD, do not think of point-to-point links. We are actually going to try to do an entire backbone down the country from Delhi to Bangalore, right? And then move it over to Chennai. Delhi to Bangalore, you'll cover Hyderabad, you'll cover Indore, Bhopal, right? And then you can set up feeders across that. So we do need our standards to enable something like this. And it's not going to be done by one person, it's going to be done by the collective, all of us sitting here. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, sir. Sir,
Yes.
I have one question, sir.
Sure. I don't know.
Can I ask?
Can we have questions online? If you just scan our barcode, we can. You can put your question there, because we have one more presenter here for this. Maybe you can talk later during lunch. So Professor C.M. Chandrashekar is here with us. He's a professor at Indian Institute of Sciences, Bengaluru. He's also an affiliate member at the Institute of Quantum Computing, Waterloo, Canada. Over years, he has worked in close collaboration with research groups working on different platforms for quantum computation and by developing protocols and algorithms suitable for the hardware. Professor C.M. Chandrashekar, please.
Thank you very much. So I work on both theoretical and experimental part of quantum information theory. So at IISc we have, just most of my talk would be on the current state, what we call as quantum simulators and what is quantum simulations. So it will be less of the work we do rather and more than work we do. I'll try to cover what is considered as a standard and what we call it as quantum simulators and what are the benchmarks and when do we call that, when can we treat that we have reached some supremacy, and that's what I'm going to cover. So before that, I just want to say we also do some experiments at IISc where we are single and entangled photons, and we are trying to engineer photons so that it can be used for communications, computation and various other applications. So just to give, okay. So there is still, it's going forward.
The red one is back.
No, that is not the one.
You are close to launch. You can only go forward.
But then I should finish it now.
Just keep pressing forward.
No, it's only going forward. I think the small red, right? I think there is this.
It's the small red one. Yeah. This one. Press it hard.
Oh, okay. It's an extra power, I guess. Yeah. So I haven't had my lunch, so I. sure that. Okay. So sorry. So I think over years it has taken nearly some 80 years for the quantum theory to be developed, and almost 20 years for scientists to learn how to engineer quantum states. It can be two levels, atomic system, photons, or superconducting qubit, and lot of things. And it has really taken a lot of effort and time. So first experimental proof of Bell's violation was in 1983. So we can see the timeline here, and it was in 2020 that some supremacy of quantum computers, which means that no classical computers can do, and there was something that a quantum computer did. So we'll look into that in detail a little bit. So, and there has only been like couple of supremacy results till date. So which means that we have a lot of work to do, and probably other 2 decades, 3 decades to look at how we progress with it and what are the current status of it. So just 2 examples of supremacy. So this was the Google which claimed using 53 qubits, said that some randomized circuits, there is nothing useful about it, and that randomized circuit gave us some output. And from that output, they said, okay, there is no classical computers which it can do that. It has been debated, it has been questioned, but that's still a reasonable, effort to say that there was a quantum processor which was used, a 53 qubit, and did something which a classical computers can't do. So this is a kind of what we call as universal quantum computer. I'll come to that, where circuit was done and anything can be done. The other one was a Chinese experiment, which had some 76 photons roughly. On an average, it was only 43. Where they did one specific problem. It's not a universal computer. It was not something which was circuit based and did everything. What we call as a boson sampling problem, and there's a mathematical equivalent of it which is called calculating permanence. So you can look into the Wikipedia and say it's one of the hardest problems. So this is something which you can't do in classical computers, and they did do this experiment in a quantum computer. In the sense, in a quantum simulator, what we call. So these are the only 2 known examples which recently have shown that there is some supremacy. It's been looked into. So these are big problems, and you should notice that we're talking about some 50 qubits or 60 qubit here. Where does that come in? Is that okay? So there is okay. So we call. I think again I got started. Okay. So there is something called superposition, which you all have seen, and the power, if you look at it, so if I am looking at, okay. So when we talk about 50 qubits, so why was that 50 qubit important to show supremacy? So if I am taking any quantum systems, if I can just take an atom or any 2 energy levels, and if I start looking at bringing them into a superposition state, the number of possible configurations I can look at, even with 3 quantum systems or 4 quantum systems, you can see the way it scales up. So you get up to like 10 to the power of like 15, 16 number of classical bits are needed to simulate some quantum system which is equivalent to about 50 qubits. So which means that if I'm crossing a 50 qubit system, which means that any classical computers above this power is needed to mimic it and simulate. So what happens with the power increasing with classical and the quantum? In quantum version, I just had to add 1 extra qubit to double the capacity of it. In a quantum classical processor, I need to multiply. It means that I need to double the processor size to increase the speed of it. And this is just to say that how it scales up and why supremacy people talk about after 50 qubits. So if I'm looking at gross understanding of our day-to-day life problems, we have water, ethanol, there are many of our daily use applications, right? So if I want to simulate them explicitly in a quantum processor, the number of classical bits needed and the number of quantum bits needed are given here. It's a rough estimate, right? So now, even water molecules, we really need about 10 to the power of 4 classical bits to do it exactly. But how do current quantum chemists do? And how do the drug industry or many of these people look at this problem is that they try to kind of approximate, in the sense remove unwanted states which are there and then say, okay, these are the only required states, and then they start looking at simulating them. But this means that there are a lot of approximations and a lot of improvisations. If you want to get into more precise, you might have to simulate them as explicitly as possible. So quantum computers do have an important role to look at simulating those chemical complexes, right? So in simulations, there are standard definitions. These are like academic definitions and people strictly follow them. So there are two kinds of simulations we look at. One is called digital quantum simulation and other is analog. So when we talk about digital quantum simulations, it's a universal computation kind of thing. You can have a problem, you can decompose it into quantum circuits, you can build a quantum circuits, take it to a computer and then implement it on a computer and you get an output. The other one is an analog simulator, which means that you are having a system, a quantum system, which probably can't do everything you want, but it can do one specific problem. Just like in the beginning, I gave two examples. One was the Google's one, which is a universal quantum simulator, which means that you have a quantum circuit, you can implement those circuits. And there's another example which solved a boson sampling problem. It can do only one problem. The whole machine can only do one problem. So that's what we call as an analog quantum simulation, which means that it can't do many things. It can just do one problem, which is hard. Now that's still good enough. And these are two categories which we study kind of. So they solve one of the problems. It's not always about the number of qubits. It's also about how we are going to use qubits. This was one of the problems we worked in collaboration with Merrill and Ion Trap. We had an algorithm we wanted to implement on in their machine. And in this collaborative work, we had access to 50 qubits. But the problem is when we want to simulate them, we want to break it up into the circuits and then see how we can make a meaningful or get a meaningful output of it. So the current architecture, almost all the computers which we have available, in the beginning I mentioned there are only two problems which have been really broken up as a supremacy one. It's just because we can't implement enough number of gates on them. In any architecture which are available today, it's not about 300, 400 qubit, it's the number of gates we can implement on them. So from one of the best architecture today available is also ion qubits, where coherence times are good. We could only implement about 78 single qubits and 32 qubits before the system dies. It means that the noise seeps in and then becomes decoher in the process. So when we were looking at standardizations, we need to see about the processors and what is that it can really do, and how many number of, or what is the coherence time of them. And it's not just about the qubits, it's a qubit and the number of operations which it can do, and then the coherence time it is needed to be looked into. Right? So there is another this is again an analog simulator, so which is called as an optimization problem. So probably you might have heard of another kind of computers which we call D-waves, where it only tries to find the ground state of a solution. Right? You have a complicated problem and you want to optimize it and you want to get a ground state of it. So classically what happens is that you might end up seeing that this itself has a ground state and you happily sit there. But what Hamiltonians or a quantum mechanics does is that there is always some kind of tunneling which happens, and because of the tunneling you will be able to find out a real ground state is possible. So this is again a kind of a classical simulator. So we can, what you call an analog simulator, which does an optimization problem. So there are broad categories which in academia we try to look at. Is one is the universal quantum computer, which can do what we call a universal simulator or digital quantum simulator, or there are a special task quantum computers which does a specific problems. It can be a boson sampling, or it can be a quantum annealing, or we are also looking at this noisy intermediate scales now currently, where people are trying to look at, you have noisy systems and you can start working on how we make a better use of it and understand the noisy category. So this is the broad categories which we have. So there are various other problems in academia which we are interested in and try to see how we can make use of the small scale quantum computers which are available. And you really don't need a big qubits for them, and just to understand and build an algorithmic base, right? So this is one of the problems where you have real-time dynamics of lattice gauge theory. These are the problems which, you might all know this Large Hadron Collider, where billions of dollars have been spent by the international community to do certain experiments. Now you can, if you have a quantum simulator and you can do some experiments and have a predetermined idea of how and what experiments is what protocol should exactly has to go to an hadron, or you can save billions of dollars to the world. So that's one of the motivations where it can be a CERN or various other academic communities have got together to see that, to develop algorithms for such problems. This is a simple 2 qubit or 3 qubit problem which was kind of looked some years back, and a lot of progress are going on in that direction. right? So there's another interesting problem, which in fact, it's a still an open problem. We all know how efficiently the nature works, the photosynthesis problem, right? I mean, and we still don't have an exact model of photosynthesis. And there is an algae which stays 5 kilometers below in the sea, and it receives just 2 photons in a day, or probably 3 photons, and efficiently converts into an energy. Now, if we understand the whole quantum process which is happening in the algae, and then if we can simulate and mimic them in some other quantum systems, which means that we have actually built an efficient solar cell. And this problem is been something from over last 10 years academicians have been working on. There has been various models, and we also looked at some particular models. It's been published. All that you would need, if you understand the dynamics, is only about 5 qubits, right? Which means that you can have some device with some equivalent to 5 qubits, and we can mimic the whole process and have a very efficient solar cells. Today's efficient solar cells, even in laboratory settings, are only 30, but those living organisms work at above 90% efficiency. So these problems remain open, and for quantum computers and algorithms, both the directions to look at it, right? So, I mean, we have a circuit for it, but it's only 5 qubit, but this circuit can't go into any existing quantum computers, because the number of operations needed are already to complete this whole process at the current understanding, right? So there is a light which falls on one of the centers, and then it takes some particular paths in superposition and ends up being in reaction centers and efficiently converts into an energy. So that's the model which is currently accepted by the academicians. It will still get improvised with more work in this directions. Now, if I want to simulate these dynamics, then we have to have some kind of circuits, and this algorithm is there, but we need a processor to be looked at it, right? So there's another interesting problem. With the interest of time, I will just skip this again. There's another interesting problem, again, which can serve the community in labs, is nitrogen fixation, right? So this, again, a very, very useful problem. The whole of our life sustenance is based on how nitrogen is getting converted into ammonia, right? The current classical computers which we talk about can efficiently simulate only one of those F clusters in this whole nitrogen processes, right? Nitrogen fixation processes. And people have been trying hard to use the best of the supercomputers to try to simulate P and F clusters. And there are proposals of how a classical and quantum computer combinations together can solve or try to help in coming up with a proper understanding. The simulation itself helps in understanding how the nitrogen fixation happens. And if you have them, then the whole fertilizer industry and agriculture industry can completely be revolutionized, right? Because it kind of makes things a lot more simpler by understanding the nitrogen fixation problem. So there are problems like this. I know plenty of them. I just picked 1, 2, 3 in the whole process. And there are, again, quantum simulators were last years or the way academicians look at is a quantum simulator is a simulator which is quantum mechanical in nature, which means that there is some real system and which is quantum mechanical. There is another quantum mechanical system which mimics the system. But I do hear many times there are classical systems which people start talking it as a quantum simulator. They are not. So in fact, if you look at literature, they are very carefully worded, even like the one which IISc and CDAC developed, they call it as quantum computer simulator toolkit, which means that it is trying to simulate a quantum computer, which means it has only the upper limit of simulating what best classical computers can do. Today's best supercomputers can only do up to about like 50 qubits, 53 qubits, and that's what one can do. So you can't have any classical simulator to mimic quantum system above 50 qubit. You can do some approximations, and one can claim, I know there are some people who have claimed within India we have 500 qubit simulators, but it probably in that 500 qubit there are so many basis states, and they are thinking that okay, you can approximate, remove them all, and only this much is needed, and they are kind of rounding it off into 50 qubit. So classical, but this is a very good toolkit, like what IISc and along with CDAC had developed, is that it's a very good educational tool where people can learn to develop circuits, develop algorithms, and they get hands-on experience. If you do it even for less than 30, 40 qubits or 20, 30 qubits, you have a knowledge and you can have a base ready for it when quantum computers are there to be explicitly used. And if you look at Wikipedia, there are about 150 different kind of simulation, what we call as a quantum simulator of classical, what we call as quantum computer simulator toolkit equivalent in in public domain and using different languages. And there is also an IBM quantum circuit simulator and Amazon bracket simulator. So these are all like classical systems which are simulating some close to a 50 qubit. So we have to clearly differentiate the difference between the quantum simulator and a quantum computer simulator. I think the standardization has to come into clearly categorize between them, and then within the quantum simulators, the digital quantum simulator and an analog quantum simulator, which means that something which is universal to look at different problems and something which is specific to one specific problems. And then if somebody claims that we do have a simulator, or if somebody claims that we are developing some kind of, then they should be able to demonstrate what is the quantum phenomena in that process. Like, like Anil Prabhakar was mentioning that if you are saying that it's secure and there is quantum mechanics, the box should be open. So if you say you have a quantum simulator, then they should be able to demonstrate what is the quantum process in that simulator, which anybody can see that, okay, there is this quantum process which is defining it as a quantum simulator. And this standardizations has to come in to fix that, there are various degrees of quantum field. So it's not just superposition. You do not have to always have entanglement. So one has to identify the classes of quantum features which you can consider as something which can be put into a catalog or a manual, say, for these are the few quantum features which can be considered to get into the standardization of the technique. Right? So I think I've taken a bit of time, and I would stop at this point and leave it to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Chandrashekar. I ask Honorable Chair if he has any remarks to make. Okay. So lunch